In this video, we're going to talk about how to emit from multiple objects at the same time, as well as how to emit from groups of objects as well. So, I'll go up here to primitive and I'll create nulls, and I'll have myself one null here. Maybe I'll duplicate another one, another one, another one, so I've got 4 different nulls. ICE is so flexible that it allows you to simply select all the nulls, or the spheres, or the cubes, or whatever objects you want to emit particles from. Simply select them all. Go over here to create emit particles from selection, and ICE will go ahead and create a point cloud that will be shared by all these objects. So all these objects are using the same exact point cloud, and if I hit play, you'll notice all the objects shoot particles into the scene at the same time. If I go ahead and open up an ICE tree for that, you'll notice here's 4 different emission nodes. So I can control the different emissions. For example, I could take this emission here and change this color to green. Maybe I'll take the first one up here on the top of the list, turn that to red. Okay. So now if I go back to the first frame and play this again, you'll notice now that some of our particles are left yellow, which are the 2 that I didn't touch, and then one on the end is red and one is green. So it's a very neat way of emitting particles, and they're all sharing the same exact particle cloud, which is a very important and key thing to remember. Alright, so let me select all those things and hit delete on the keyboard to get rid of them. I'm not going to need them anymore. Now, the same thing works for geometry. So if I have spheres, for example, create some spheres here. And I'll make a couple of, I'll make some duplicates here. Works the same thing as the nulls. I can select all of those spheres and emit particles from selection. But this time something different happened. If I open up the ICE tree, you'll notice that this time, because I'm not working with nulls, what the ICE did was it created one emission here, and then what it did is it took all the spheres, like the first one, here's the second, third, and fourth, and it applied them to this emit from surface compound. So this one compound is controlling the emission of the entire particle cloud. So if I change this to say red, you'll notice that all the particles are now red because they're sharing one particle cloud, and because all the nodes are plugged into one emit from surface compound, as opposed to with the nulls, which each null had its own emit from surface compound. If you wish to change that behavior, and maybe you want this setup to be more like the null setup that we had earlier, it's actually pretty simple. What we'll do is create ourselves another emit from surface compound. Now we could go to the preset manager and go and look for it, but let's say we're a little bit lazy and want to do things faster. You can actually select this node, hit Control C on the keyboard to copy it, then hit Control V to paste it back in your ICE tree. So you just created basically a duplicate of that emit from surface compound. Now we can plug this into, say, port 2, and maybe we want sphere 3 to be controlled by this emission. So we'll disconnect it from up there and we'll reconnect it down here into the emission parameters, and then we'll select emitter 1. And by doing that, we can now open up the emit from surface compound here and change this one to, say, green. Now if we play this back, we get one of these spheres, the one we connected to the green particle emission compound, and now that one appears green. So it's more like the setup we had earlier with the nulls. So that's a very useful way of coming in here and editing this to your liking or to your necessities. Okay, so let me go ahead and close that. Now let's talk about grouping. So let's select all this stuff here, and I'm going to hit delete to get rid of it. I'll go back to primitive and let's create some cubes here. So I'll move this over. I'll hit Control D to duplicate. I'll move it over and hit Control D a couple of more times to duplicate there with transforms, and I have myself 3 cubes. If I select I'm sorry, 4 cubes. Got to check my math there. I'll select all 4 cubes, and what I'll do is I'll hit Control G on the keyboard to group that. I'll hit Enter, and I'll change the name of this group. Maybe I'll just call it Cube Group. Pretty original there. Okay. What I can do is I can create a particle system for this using ICE, and then I can use a group instead of just one geometric object. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select one of these objects, like this one, for example, here, and I'll go to ICE, create emit particles from selection. and I'll close that. I'll open up an ice tree for that. So here's our standard setup, an emit from surface compound, then we have a get cube over here and whatnot. Well, what we can do, let's open up an Explorer view by hitting 8 on the keyboard. Here's our cube group. Let's open up the ice tree again. What we can do is we can drag and drop the cube group from the Explorer window on top of the ice tree, and that creates a get cube group node. This node, as the name suggests, gets the cube group and drops it into the ice tree. So now we can take this purple node here for the value and connect it here into emitter 1. So we replace that cube that was over here with this group. And now what will happen is if I go back to the first frame of the animation and play again, all of the objects that are members of this group will have this particle cloud attached to them or associated with them. So let's say, for example, later on in my scene I decide, you know what, I want a sphere to be part of that group. Problem is right now, if I play the simulation, the sphere doesn't have particles. So what can I do? Well, in the Explorer view, I can simply click and drag the sphere into the cube group. And now because the sphere is part of the cube group, as you can see here, when I expand the cube group, you can see when I go back to the first frame of the animation and replay this, why wasn't right? Edit that out of the video, we found the bug in exercise 7. So I'm going to edit that whole sphere thing out of the video, start again in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's look at another way that we can use groups of geometry to create particles here. Let me select everything, and I'm going to go ahead and hit delete on the keyboard. Let's go back to primitive and create ourselves maybe a few cones here just to use a different shape. And I'll do the same thing. I'll just create 4 duplicates here, like so. Okay, let's take all of these objects at the same time and let's do like before. We'll go to create, emit particles from selection. Alright, with the point cloud selected, let's open up the ice tree. If there's nothing here, hit this refresh button to go ahead and make everything show up again the way it's supposed to. Okay, so here's our one emit from surface compound, and all of our cone objects are attached to it. We can use something called a geometry node inside of the ice tree to go ahead and pipe this all into this emit from surface compound here. So let's open up the preset manager. This time we're going to go to the Tools tab over here, Tool. We'll go down to Geometry Queries, and we're going to go ahead and select this Group Geometry node, and we're going to go ahead and drag and drop it right here. Alright. With this Group Geometry node here, what we can do is we can plug in the result out here, the output, into the emitter 1 input of the emit from surface compound, and then we can simply come in here and connect all of our different geometry nodes here to this node. So let's go ahead and disconnect these from the emit from surface compound. So it's kind of a neat way of packing all of your geometry nodes into this one node that can then go into the emit from surface compound or whatever emission compound that you have in your scene. And this will just do the same thing. It'll emit from all the objects that are there. So for example, I can come over here, primitive, I can create a new sphere, for example. Move this over like so. Notice the sphere doesn't have any particles to it. But what I can do is I can select the sphere, hit F3 on the keyboard to open up a floating Explorer here, grab the sphere here, the actual name, and drag and drop it right into the ice tree. So here's our get sphere node. Perfect. Now we'll simply take its out value and connect it to a new port here for group geometry. And now what will happen is if I go back to the first frame of the animation and play, you notice now the sphere has particles as well. So it's a very quick and easy way of adding more geometry, more emitters to this whole ice tree that's over here. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to end it now, and we'll continue talking about particles in the next video, so I'll see you there.